Hi, good day, everyone. So this is another recorded discussion in our subject campus journalism. So for today's discussion, we will talk about the news, a backgrounder. So um, news is difficult to define. It has many variables, but one needs to determine what is newsworthy when deciding what to write about for his or her story assignments. Try to process this. News must be factual, yet not all facts are news. A news item is based on actual occurrences, situations, thoughts, and ideas, yet not all facts are news. For instance, a dog bites a typical man. So this is not a news for many, but when a typical man bites a dog, this may be newsworthy to some. Here, the logical nature of news may be drawn such that the taste of news depends on the interest of and impact to the reader. To attain a wide range of perspectives and meanings about news, the definition of news according to Philippine journalism authors are surveys, and these are the following. According to Soriano and colleagues, news is any oral or written report of an event that happened, is happening, will happen in the north, east, west, and south that is of interest to the reader and which should be reported. So, another definition is from Soriano. News. So, there are three primary considerations in defining news. The first is news is reported through airwaves and in written form. So second, anything can become news whether the event is already done, is being done, or shall still be conducted. The third is the news considers the interest of the reader in accepting the impact of the news. That is, a news for somebody may not be a news to another person. Malinaw also defined news by pointing out that news is basically about an event, idea, or a reaction that is presented factually and simply in written form to give the reader an idea of what is currently happening around him or her, particularly on matters of interest to the community. This lengthy definition by Malinaw gives the notion that news may include or encompass any topic, including a speech or simple feedback. Moreover, it stresses that news is generally written and is based on facts. While according to Estrada and Sinks, or rather the Puig and Flores, they posited that news is any information that is significant for a particular set of readers. Simply put, they qualified news according to its relevance and interest of the readers. According to Sorian and Hanson, provides a seemingly technical definitions of news. They inscribe that news is a reportage of accurate facts, events, and ideas that interest a large number of readers. Anything that is refreshed or regenerated is also news. Here, the definition looks into the newness of idea that responds to the interest of the readers. So the definition marries the idea of immediacy and interest. Ergo, the newer the angle of the story, the more interesting it is to the readers. So for Pangalinan, provides another definition which goes news is information that has a meaning for a set of readers. So from all the definitions that mention, news can be coined by stating that it is a timely reportage of events, regardless of time and manner, which are grounded on facts. It considers nearness, importance, impact, and interest to the public. So news in school papers. So while the concepts of news in mind, a student journalist should remember that anything that concerns the school, its students, the teachers, including the parents, is newsworthy. So in news in school may include worthwhile or extraordinary facts of students like opening of a new college, inauguration of the new building, the stories of success, the conflicts or suspense, school convocations and other programs, interviews of visiting personalities, merging of two colleges, increasing tuition and other fees, a new grading system, and the like. So let's now proceed to characteristics of a good news. One can gauge the worthiness of a news by some qualities that emanate from the subject's nature and functions. So the characteristics that are discussed below become one's yardstick to determine whether an issue is worth publishing or broadcasting. In such sense, when a student writer has a limited space for a news, she tries to weigh the importance of the news that will occupy a space on the paper by enumerating the attributes of news that are present in both stories. Hence, the more attributes or characteristics a story has, the more effective it is to become catchy, interesting, and worth reading, the more it becomes appealing to the readers. Number one is the timeliness or immediacy. So these characteristics of a news item underscores the newest angle of the story. So for instance, the changing of the grading system, which was announced yesterday, is more appealing to a student other than the Christmas party last December. So it should be noted too that the more recent the activity or the event, the more appealing it is to be the reader. So next is the conflict. So the physical and mental struggles of a person are also newsworthy. So in campus context, competitions like oratorical contests and quiz bees are newsworthy due to the mental conflicts present. So sports events during intramurals or foundation days are newsworthy too, so as they have physical conflicts. Next is the proximity or nearness. So older proximity primarily refers to the geographical location. It likewise means the nearness of interest and appeal. So in the context of writing news in the campus or school for students in Batanes, what is happening to Batanes State College will be more of interest to them than what is happening to the Western Mindanao State University. So the imposition of no cell phone policy in Batanes State College will interest the Batanes readers more than the zero tuition scheme of Aklan State University, so to speak. Next is the accuracy. So journalism is anchored on facts. News writing is a journalistic skill. So therefore, the contents should be accurately reported. So accuracy primarily refers to the factualness of news as the purveyor of truth. Next is the significance. So, if something is important to the reader, surely she will read the news. So, a writer should survey whatever is significant to the life of the target readers and write about it. So, when news is important to him or her, the news bears a high degree of significance, thus newsworthy and worth reading. In the campus setting, topics that are highly significant include new rules imposed by the administration or the student government, amendments to policies, upcoming big events, results of scholarship screening, and the like. Next is prominence and names. So the world is unfair, so the adage goes. In this light, there are persons more popular than others. So popular names can effectuate situations and their acts may be more interesting to others. Hence, news about this person can yield a high degree of newsworthiness, thus becoming more readable than other news. So for campus papers, prominent personalities include the president of the student body, the principal, the student who won in national competition, and the like. Seventh is drama. So since the news is also anchored on public interest, writers should bank on any story that can lead the writers to crying or to laughing. So such story is packed with color, the subjects are moving. In this way, the news becomes appealing to the reader. So for instance, you write a story of the student leader who manages to graduate as magna cum laude despite his 5-year term as the college student government president. Oddity or unusualness. So sociology can explain why oddity is a good element of news. So a theory explains that when persons are curious about phenomenon deviating from a natural course, they will be interested in such a topic or issue. Hence, the topic becomes newsworthy. Looking into the campus situation, one may write about a 40-year-old student who has just graduated. He has just finished his fifth bachelor's degree in your college. This unusual situation may be so intriguing as regards the student's purpose, therefore becoming more newsworthy to the readers. Next is the romance and adventure. So love makes the world go around. So hence the stories about love, including adventure, may ignite the taste of the reading public. So this is also the reason why showbiz news continuously booms. Next is progress. So attaining breakthroughs and achieving scientific discoveries are given much attention by the readers. So this attribute of the news gives a high degree of shock and a sense of development in the society where the persons live. Looking into a school situation, progress may be in the form of a newly constructed building and newly donated laboratory equipment from alumni abroad. Last is the numbers. For persuasion, statistics or figures have the power to shake the conviction of the audience. So this is why numbers yield a very strong impact on the readers. So however, the figures that one should write should be worth appreciating. So for instance, the Alumni Association donated one computer set last January, while the Parent Teachers Association donated 57 computer sets to the school. The latter yields a higher degree of newsworthiness than the former. So it is not safe to say, however, that the higher the figure, the higher is its newsworthiness. Say your school has performed in the National Achievement Test 50% lower than the last year's data. This is a figure lower than the usual and yet bears a higher degree of interest. So those are the characteristics of a good news. So we have the timeliness or immediacy, the conflict, the proximity or nearness. We have the accuracy, significance, prominence, and names. And we have the drama, the oddity or unusualness, romance and adventure. And we have also the progress, the numbers. So let us now proceed to the types of news stories according to the chronology or the sequence. Number one is the spot news. As the term suggests, this is the news story that gathers information as it is broadcast at the same time. It is unscheduled and demands immediate publication. So, in many instances, the reporter becomes the first hand witness to the activity or subject taking place. For instance, a student journalist happens to be standing at the gate when a jeepney bumps an education student. He writes the story and publishes it in the weekly newsletter of the college. Next is the coverage news. Many interchange spot news and coverage news. Though both of them are good avenues for first-hand information, the difference between the two is that the coverage news is written based on the given assignment to the reporter or news writer. The assignment is sometimes called beat, so it means that the writer knows what to write about. So, for example, the chief editor wants to publish what transpires in the academic meeting. So, he assigns Jessica, a writer, to cover the meeting. Jessica knows what she shall write about and shall be concentrated only on the meeting, thus her beat. Next is advanced news. So when a writer crafts news about an upcoming event, say meeting the advance or of running student leaders, change of opening of classes for the next academic year, and an announcement of new uniforms to take the effect next semester, she actually writes an advanced news. In advanced stories, writers' skills in creating many news perspectives on a subject are tested so as to create climax when the event happens. Sometimes, series stories are created with one or two reporters, guarding the newest angles of the event or situation. Next is follow-up news. So while advanced news is predictive, follow-up news looks into the upshot to an event or situation. For instance, a reporter wrote a news about the imposition of the new uniform effective this semester. Then in the next issue, he shall write on the ideas and comments of the students about the new uniform or the problems they now meet. So these are the types of news story according to the chronology or sequence. So number one is spot news, the coverage news, the advanced news, and the follow-up news. So let's now proceed to the type of news stories according to the range and reach. Number one is local news. So this is a news item. So the subject of which happens in one's own community where the paper originates. For instance, the builders, the official student organ of Batan State College, covers the installation of underground electrification system in their province. The news is said to be the local news since it is about the province itself. Next is the national news. Countrywide, countrywide news is called the national news. So it is determined when the news impacts the people of a certain country. So most national news is published in the dailies. So I'm sorry, this is the countrywide, not the countryside. Next is the foreign news. So all news items will trace their origin from outside the borders of the country. Some foreign news articles also create impact to typical local due to their domino effect like the oil price hike in the world market. Next is the Dateline news. This is an out of town news story. So this news is introduced by a dateline which states the place from which the story was reported, the date and the source of the materials if not written by the local staff. So these are the news stories according to the range and reach. We have the local news, the national news, the foreign news, and the dateline news. Let's proceed to the types of news stories according to construction. Number one is straight news. So this is the first paragraph answers the most important W. That is the what, where, when, and why, and who. So depending on which the W's is the most prominent among them, it's body paragraphs of the elaboration on the W's and the H. So it is written using the inverted triangle structure. So this is the example of the straight news. So as you can see here, presentation of who, elaboration of who, and additional information, what the who did, and the list information about another who. Next is the news feature. So this is special type of news should not be confused with the feature articles. So news feature is sometimes called special features and printed in the feature sections of the newspapers or in the magazines. So human interest and news feature stories are classified as news since both are gathered and written daily by reporters as their regular assignments. Furthermore, both emphasize the elements of timeliness or immediacy which distinguish news from the other types of reading, although they differ in important respects from the straight news story. So as you can see here, the topic is Love is in the Air, and then the next one is the Feb E Big and the February 14. So it has two kinds. Number one is the single feature or one incident story. So again, this is one of the kind of the news feature. So it may be an account of a speech, an interview, an election that deals with an isolated event. So in writing a news feature story with this kind of structure, include the one feature in the lead, add in the body details which clarify and explain the lead. So see that the story breaks logically at every paragraph and that the story may be cut if lengthened as space dictates. Next is we have the several feature multiple angle or composite story. So this in a composite story, two or more divergent aspects of a news topic are drawn together for the sake of space and coherence. In structure, the composite story may resemble that of a follow-up story in the both of them aim to consolidate component parts. However, they differ in the sense that follow-up story ends in a tie with a past story, whereas the composite story is composed of units, each one made of fresh spot news, frequently with reference to the future. In writing the several feature composite story, include all the features in a comprehensive lead in the order of their importance. So the next step is to explain and elaborate in the body of each of the features in the order which they are in the lead. In doing this, relegate less important details of each feature to less important positions. But remember that each chain of facts, although covered separately, should be handled as a single unified story. Next Next type of news story according to construction is the factory story. So this is a plain exposition of a simple situation of a series of closely related events which conform to the inverted triangle design more closely than any other kinds of news. So the component parts are the series of facts that may be likened two rectangles of diminishing length arranged one after the other in order of their importance. So the key to proper arrangement consists solely in judging the relative value of the data at hand and in grouping them in their respective order. Next is the action story. So this is a narrative involving not merely simple facts but dramatic actions, incidents, descriptions of persons, perhaps testimonies of witness, as well as explanatory data. So in reading this kind of story, first write a summarizing lead in any appropriate form, relate the most important details in a narrative or chronological order or form. Tell the story again by giving more details, but be careful not to begin the chronological order just after beginning. So give sufficient attention to the elaboration of important information, background, and interpretation, and each unit must be closely interlocked. So this is the example of the speech report story. Next is the speech report quote and interview stories. So the arrangements of a speech report, a quote story, and of an interview are to great extent similar. So the quote story may be charted as alternating large and small rectangles of diminishing size, summary arrangement. So the quotation may be direct, indirect, or a combination of both. So in writing this kind of story, the following suggestions may be helpful. Number one is write summarizing lead in any appropriate form. Write the body of the story in a summary arrangement, and the lead may be a summarizing statement, the gist of the speech, statement, letter, or interview, or it may be the most important quotation in the story written as direct quote. Next is types of news stories according to minor news form. So we have the news brief. So this is a short item of news interest written like a brief and telegraphic message. So it gives mainly the result with few details. Next is the news bulletin. So it is similar to the lead of a straight news stories. So its aim is just give the gist of the news. Next is the news featurette. So this is a short news feature, usually use a filler, say quirks in the news. Next is sidebar. So it is a news item or a feature placed side by side its mother story to which it is related but under a headline of its own. Next is flash. So this is a message giving first brief news of an event. So it is usually boxed. So these are the types of news stories according to minor news form. So we have the news brief, the news bulletin, the news featurette, the sidebar, and the flash. So for your performance activity on the comment section below, this is consists of 20 points. Answer the following questions by following the given format. So you have to put your name, your section or your cluster, your year, and your answer. So the deadline of submission is on September 6, 2023, 8 p.m. only. So number one is enumerate the characteristics of news and then explain the quotation below. So trying to determine what is going on in the world by reading newspapers is like trying to tell the time by watching the second hand of a clock. So again, for your face-to-face activity, you have to bring to class at least 3 back issues of your school paper. So, in the absence of one, a daily newspaper may do. So, clip 10 news articles and survey the articles according to the matrix below. So, again, you have to make this and compile it to your portfolio. So, this is the matrix. Next is in your scrapbook or portfolio, clip and mount 5 straight news stories that contain human interest. Next is from any school paper, preferably from other institutions, clip 2 news stories that deals with classroom activities. So that's all for today's discussion. So I hope you learned something from the discussion. And again, if you have any questions, so don't hesitate to message it in our official group chat. So again, the schedule of the quiz will be announced in our GC. So I suggest to finish watching the recorded discussion and kindly study it. So thank you again and see you in our next discussion. God bless everyone.